The House will come to order. Please remain standing for the presentation of colors this morning by the Civil Air Patrol cadets.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Oh, hello.
The Civil Air Patrol cadets, Airman First Class Jacob George and Senior Airman Christian Glaspignow will now lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mark time. Mark. Colors. Face. Forward.
And we would like to thank the Civil Air Patrol cadets of the Valkyrie Cadet Squadron, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Bloom, Chief Master Sergeant Kyle Herricks, Staff Sergeant Janet Sanner, Airman First Class Ebony Washington, for presenting the colors, and also to the cadets who led us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and a thank you to Sergeant First Class David Morrill, who led us in singing the national anthem. Thank you all very much. A brief announcement, members and our guests from the Senate. We have been provided with ribbons to wear today. If you have served our country in the military or members of your family have, please, during roll call, help yourself to the ribbons up here and wear them with pride. And now I would ask Mr. Kohler to please call the roll.
Representatives Arndt, Becker J, Becker K, Brown, Buck, Buckner, Representative Buckner,
Representative Buckner excused.
Colonel Carver, Conti, Corum, Court, Danielson,
Representative Danielson excused.
Sergeant Del Grosso, Dorr, Duran, Esgar, Everett, Fields, Foote, Garnett, Janal, Hamner, Specialist Humphrey, Joshi, Kagan, Lieutenant Klingenschmidt, Kraft Tharp, Landgraf, Lawrence, Lance Corporal Lebsock, Lee, Leonard, Lontine, Lundeen, McCann, Melton, Mitch Bush, Moreno, Navarro, Captain Neville, Nordberg, Pabon, Pedersen, Primavera, Representative Priola excused, Captain Rankin, Ransom, Rosenthal, Sergeant Ruppe, Ryden, Sane, Salazar, Lieutenant Colonel Sias, Singer, Thurlow, Tyler, Van Winkle, Vigil, Willett, Williams, Wilson, Windholes, Winter, Wist, Young. Madam Speaker.
I did, yeah. I thought he was leaving at 10. I guess it's probably around 10. So also, so it's Jesse Danielson, Buckner, and 3 over. So 62 and 3, yeah. May we have your attention? We intend to proceed here. Representative Carver. Oh.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the reading of the Journal of January 28, 2016 be dispensed with and that it be approved as corrected by the Chief Clerk.
You have heard the motion that the reading of the journal be dispensed with as corrected by the Chief Clerk. Seeing no objection, so ordered. Thank you, members. It's now an honor to introduce the Speaker Pro Tem of the House, who I have asked to preside over this wonderful day that we're now going to experience. And thank you for your attention and your quiet in the chambers.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this is a very important day that we have before us. We have many veterans, we have many military active members. Please give your attention and respect as we start our proceedings. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move to lay over 1002 until Monday, February 1st.
House Joint Resolution 1001 will be laid over until Monday, February 1st. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Joint Resolution 1003.
House Joint Resolution 1003 by Representatives Lantin and Ruppe, also Senators Lambert and Carroll, concerning recognition of military veterans and MIA POW Appreciation Day.
Representative Ruppe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move House Joint Resolution 161003.
Would you like
and
it
I
to
ask
be read
it
at
to
length?
be read at length. Sorry.
Whereas Colorado has a proud and distinguished history of dedicated military service by men and women of this state whose courage, heroism, and sacrifice preserve the liberties and democratic way of life set forth in our state and federal constitutions. And whereas Colorado is home to a significant number of military installations, including Fort Carson, the United States Air Force Academy, Buckley Air Force Base, Peterson Air Force Base, Schriever Air Force Base, and Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station, that contribute not only to the national security of our nation, but to the economic health of our state. And whereas Colorado benefits significantly from the presence and military service of the more than 53,000 men and women in our state who serve in the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, the Branch Reserves, the Colorado National Guard, and the Civil Air Patrol. And whereas the men and women of the Colorado National Guard have served in defense of our nation and as the first military responders in support of civil authorities during domestic emergencies and are celebrating their 156th anniversary this year. And whereas in times of conflict around the globe, it is particularly appropriate to recognize the Coloradans in all branches and components of the armed services who serve around the world to protect the security and peace of our nation and other nations. And whereas in addition to active members of the armed services, Colorado is the proud home of more than 391,000 military veterans who have served their country long and well and who bring great honor and distinction to the state. And whereas Colorado is home not only to active duty service personnel and veterans, but also to the countless family members of these men and women who display the same dedication, courage, and sacrifice. And whereas we should also never forget the sacrifices made for us by the 94 men from Colorado declared missing in action or prisoners of war while defending the principles of liberty and justice in conflicts in Korea, Laos, and Vietnam. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 70th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the 70th General Assembly, hereby extend our heartfelt gratitude to our state's veterans, past and present, to all military men and women currently serving in the armed services, and to the family members of active duty personnel and veterans, and that we remember and honor those prisoners of war and those missing in action from previous conflicts. That we express our continued partnership with and support of Fort Carson and maintain our strong commitment to supporting ongoing military training at the Mountain Post. And that we encourage the citizens of Colorado to join in the celebration of Colorado's Military, Veterans, and MIA POW Appreciation Day on January 29, 2016, in recognition and honor of the thousands of fellow citizens in the military who protect and serve their communities, state, and country. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to President Barack Obama, Governor John Hickenlooper, Lieutenant General Michelle Johnson, Superintendent, United States Air Force Academy, Major General H. Michael Edwards, Adjutant General of Colorado, Major General Paul LaCamera, Commanding General, 4th Infantry Division and Fort Carson, Colonel John Wagner, Commander of the 460th Space Wing, Buckley Air Force Base, Colonel William J. LaCory Jr., Commander, 50th Space Wing, Schriever Air Force Base, Colonel John Shaw, Commander, 21st Space Wing, Peterson Air Force Base, the Colorado Board of Veterans Affairs, the United Veterans Committee of Colorado, the Mountain States Chapter Paralyzed Veterans of America, the American Legion Department of Colorado, the Department of Colorado Veterans of Foreign Wars, the Broomfield Veterans Memorial Museum, the Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum, and each member of Colorado's congressional delegation.
Representative Lontine.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. On behalf of the Colorado General Assembly, I would like to welcome all of our active duty military, veterans, reserve members, and their families. Thank you for your service. While the General Assembly has just one day to honor your service and sacrifice, I know that we do honor and thank you every day. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Representative Rupe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the Assembly, as a veteran, I can speak for myself, but I'm sure that other veterans take this very seriously, very deeply in having your appreciation. We serve on your behalf, and we protect each of our different values, what we stand for, what our principles of liberty are. And we thank you for the service that you do with us and as part of the General Assembly. Thank you.
Is there any further members who would like to speak on House Joint Resolution 10003? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Members, today we honor and thank all of our military personnel who have served and fought to protect our freedoms here in our country. This morning I'd like to share with you the role of African Americans in the World War II and other wars. There has been no war that was fought within the United States in which African Americans did not participate, including the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Mexican-American War, the Civil War, the Spanish War, the World Wars, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, and wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, as well as other minor conflicts. Over 2.5 million African Americans registered for the draft of World War II. Black women also served in large numbers while they served in the Army Air Force, the Navy, the Marine, the Coast Guard. They experienced discrimination and segregation, but met the challenge and persevered. President Roosevelt issued Executive Order 8802, reaffirming the policy of full participation in the defense program by all persons, regardless of their race, creed, color, national origin. The expansion of the executive order to abolish segregation, such as the Tuskegee Airmen and the 761st Tank Battalion. World War II service from African Americans included 909,000 who served in the Army, 17,000 African Americans who served in the Marine Corps during the war, and almost 5,000 African Americans served in the Coast Guard. 2,300 were steward mates and gun crews, and 2,400 served in shore establishments. African American women volunteered in large numbers as nurses. And again, we thank you for your service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Thank you, Representative Williams. Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. In addition to Representative Williams' words, I want to give a special recognition to the Tuskegee Airmen. They have direct ties to Colorado in that many of them were stationed here in the metro area at Lowry Air Force Base and Buckley Air Force Base. With the Tuskegee Airmen, they flew nearly 145,000 black men served in the U.S. Army Air Force, including the 99th Fighter Squadron, popularly known as the Tuskegee Airmen. The Tuskegee Airmen received 150 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 14 Bronze Stars, and 744 Air Medals. During World War II, the Red Tail Squadron of the Tuskegee Airmen flew over 200 escort missions across most of Europe. And 3 of the Tuskegee Airmen went on to serve as generals in the United States military, Daniel James, Benjamin O. Davis, and Lucius Theus. And with that, we want to again recognize that the Tuskegee Airmen contributed greatly to America's prosperity and security, and we thank them for their service.
Representative Salazar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Good morning, members. Good morning, good members of the military, veterans. I want to honor the American GI Forum. American GI Forum was founded in Corpus Christi, Texas, March 26 of 1948. And much the same as my African-American colleagues in the legislature, it was founded because Latinos, although serving in the multiple wars that America has been in, they suffered discrimination. My grandfather suffered that discrimination. He served in 2 wars. He served in World War II, and he served in the Korean War. The first, he was in the Navy, and the second, he was in the Air Force. And yet, despite that brave service and despite the sacrifice and volunteering to sacrifice for the country, they suffered discrimination and segregation. So the GI Forum was founded, and it is actually constitutionally chartered, congressionally chartered. The motto is, education is our freedom, and freedom should be everybody's business. And what a beautiful motto that is, because it is through education that we learn the horrors of segregation and discrimination, and we don't repeat those things in the future. The Colorado Mile High chapter is located here in Denver. And we have a member here, a very esteemed member of the Colorado Mile High chapter, Richard Pabon, who is also the father of the Speaker Pro Tem. And it's through his military service that has led him to be one of our great distinguished leaders in the Latino community. In fact, I'm quite certain that it is because of his military service that his leadership has moved our community forward. In fact, it is his military experience that causes me to stand at attention every time he talks to me. Otherwise, I know I'm going to have to get down and give him 20.
Me too, Representative Salazar.
So as we celebrate this Military Appreciation Day, it's really important to recognize that it's these leaders here, these African American and Latino leaders, the very first who took those steps for our current service personnel. They were the first to stop the discrimination and segregation, and that's why our military is even more mighty and more powerful today than what it was back then, and that's saying something. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Salazar. Representative Esgar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Members, it's an honor to stand before you all today with these guests here in our House. Our veterans have put their lives on the line for us, and now many struggle to deal with real mental and emotional issues every day. Post-traumatic stress disorder has changed some of their lives forever, including my brother-in-law, who served 2 tours in Afghanistan. Members, we have to remember that we must do better every day to help our veterans now and in the future. On this important and special day, I am also proud to bring with me the memory of my hero, my grandfather, Anthony J. Toth. He was a proud member of the U.S. Navy during World War II, and when his ship, the U.S. Arizona, was bombed in Pearl Harbor, he decided without hesitation he was going to re-enlist to defend and protect our country, as he was a very proud man. He was a man of valor, pride, and a true patriot who taught me that hard work and serving your community truly is the American way. So thank you. I stand in full support of HJR 161003. Thank you.
Representative Carver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Our current active duty serving have sacrificed at a level, they and their families, unknown in the modern era. Many of these soldiers, sailors, Marine, airmen, have done 5 deployments. I personally know of a number of active duty who have done as many as 7 deployments. All these deployments are in very high stress, dangerous situations in Iraq, Afghanistan, and other related outposts. And the sacrifice that they make, that their families make, is light years away from what our veterans, the great sacrifices that were made in Vietnam and in earlier wars, when they did not have these repeated deployments and then home for a short period of time and then back on deployments. And so we have to recognize the level of sacrifice of our current active duty and the challenges that proposes. And the other thing I want to recognize and commend is with the current downsizing and now our veterans coming off active duty, as many as 500 per month come off active duty at Fort Carson and go into civilian life in an economy that is better, but in many respects still not great. And so I commend also, and I know there are many in this room, including those sitting at the very front of our chamber, who have seen the struggles of our veterans in transitioning to civilian life and have come back into public service to devote themselves full-time to helping our veteran community. And so I commend them. I know they go to work every day with a sense of purpose, and I so appreciate the legislature doing this Military Appreciation Day. Thank you.
Is there any other House members? Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and I rise in very strong support for this House Joint Resolution 1003. And members, so as we heard this morning, a lot of recognition for the diversity of our military, and that diversity was not always appreciated. And I think that what we're doing now is we're starting to come to terms with that, and we're saying, you know, that it really is our strength. That's what makes us such a great country. That's what makes us such a great military. And one of the parts of that diversity are our Jewish members of our military. And many members of my family served, including my Uncle Sam, who served in World War II in the Seabees in the Navy. My Uncle Abe, who's still alive in Minnesota, who was a Marine, who is a Marine. And he still lives with the pain from the battle that he fought in the Pacific Theater. And it makes it difficult for him to sleep. It makes it difficult for him to sit. It makes it difficult for him to stand. And he deals with it bravely. I'd like to also thank my Uncle Morris, who's actually now a constituent in my district. And he just turned 90. And he was in the Army in Italy during World War II. And so he was so very devout in his faith that once for Yom Kippur, he went down to Rome to a synagogue, and So he observed, practiced there, and then he came back to his unit, and he was told that where his artillery battery was completely annihilated, and had he stayed, he too would have perished. So to this day, he is still very devout. And he still wakes up at night dreaming and with nightmares about his service. And I think that sort of tells us that many of our veterans live that nightmare, whether it's during the day or they wake up at night thinking about the battles that they were in. I'd also like to thank my dad, who served in France in the 50s in the Army. And then after that, he was a civilian. And he took us, our family, to Europe, where I lived for a number of years on various military bases. And so I also think we should also thank our civilian members who supported our military, some of whom probably perished as well and also sacrificed. I'd like to also thank my brother Brian, who's a 23-year veteran of the Air Force, and now he works for the Veterans Administration. Also my constituent Marv Myers, who's with us today, and a new constituent I had not met until now, Mr. Willie Clark. So thank you for this opportunity to speak and remember some important people to me. Thank you.
Representative McCann.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. And I just, since this is my last year in the General Assembly, I just wanted to take a moment and tell you about my dad, Colonel James H. McCann, who was a colonel in the Army. I'm an Army brat, and we learned from him the importance of country, the importance of our heritage, and the importance of discipline and dedication, diligence. So growing up, I'm not sure I appreciated all that, but now that time has passed, I think many of us have parents or relatives who served in World War II. And what happened to my dad is that he just decided that this was a career for him. When he went into the service to serve in World War II, made the decision that he would stay in the Army the rest of his career and served very proudly. And when he retired, he went back to Virginia Tech, where he had gone to school, and became assistant commandant of cadets. So he worked with young men and women who were interested in a military career. And I remember, you know, my dad was a pretty traditional guy, and so when they decided at Virginia Tech that women would be allowed into the Corps of Cadets, I know that was not something he thought was a great idea, but being the good soldier that he was, he made it work and never said a word, really, and made things work. So I just wanted to recognize him and all of our veterans who served in that war, as well as the many wars since, and make sure that we continue to work with our veterans over the next several years to help them reintegrate back into our culture. I think it's a little more difficult now than it was for those World War II veterans. So thank you all that are here today for your service. Thank the families, and thank you for letting me take a moment. Thanks.
Representative Janal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I too rise in support of House Joint Resolution 1003. Words can't express the gratitude that I feel for all the veterans and the active duty military that are present here today, as well as those who are working within our state and for our country, not just here, but in all parts of the world. My father served in the Navy during World War II, Joseph Janal. He was in the Pacific Theater on the USS Mount Olympus, which was a major communications vessel. Both my brothers served in the U.S. Army. One made a career and actually was a civilian after retiring from active duty, was a civilian in the U.S. Army as well. Both my uncles, Edward Janalski was in World War II in England, and Dr. Andrew Bondar, retired colonel, World War II in North Africa. I, too, spent one semester in Air Force ROTC, and so I have a small part following in my family's footsteps. But it has been in my family. I am very proud of what our veterans and our active duty military do for our country. It's an issue that I care very much about, and I'm honored to be able to advocate for veterans and their families, and I will continue to do everything I can for our military and for our veterans who gave so much for us. Thank you.
Representative Klingenschmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. As an Air Force Academy graduate, 20-year veteran, and former Navy chaplain, I'd also like to not only support this resolution, but recognize the family members of those who have supported our veterans. You know, a lot of times people are sent overseas on deployment, and we recognize their sacrifice, but it's the mom who's stuck at home with 3 kids and 2 hands, and you know, for months at a time, either the children go without a mother or father who is deployed, or the spouse is left without the support that they would have at home, or the parents or the grandparents are often worrying and praying for our service members. And as a chaplain, I used to get those Red Cross messages on the ship. When there's hardship at home and you've got to negotiate with the sailor to maybe fly home during deployment for an emergency, because the family is still a part of the support structure that would not otherwise make us successful. And so I'm very appreciative, and I think all of our veterans in the room are very appreciative of the non-service members who support their family members and service members. And so I would just like to remember them and appreciate them at the same time we're honoring our military veterans with this resolution. I urge an aye vote.
Representative Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I want to thank Representative Valentine and Representative Ruppe for bringing this resolution. I also rise in strong support. And I'm here and like to speak on behalf of the mothers, because if not for the mothers, we wouldn't have these soldiers that we would recognize. I'm a very proud parent of a West Point graduate who's been deployed twice, and I have to be honest with you, it's nerve-wracking to know that your son could be in harm's way, and I can't imagine a daughter in that situation, but I truly want to stand and just thank the mothers who have given their son and daughter to protect our country. And I think we need to encourage our youth. We're becoming generations of knowing where our freedom comes from, and I think we still need to tell the story. So thank you so much for all the veterans for being here, and all the military men and women. We love you. Thank you.
Representative Sias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and I rise in support of this resolution, and of course thank all our veterans from all conflicts and all services, and appreciate your service. I do want to take a moment and single out one particular organization that I would like to thank, and that is the members of our Colorado Air National Guard who are here today. Representative General Edwards, General Lowe, General Love. You all represent an organization that I have some familiarity with, and it is a great organization not just because of the airplanes that you fly, and I can tell you the F-16s that they fly in particular are one kick in the tail to fly, but what makes that organization great is the people. And whether it is the pilots, whether it's the folks that are maintaining the aircraft, the folks working in admin, life support, intelligence, they are an absolutely spectacular unit. And what many folks here may not realize is that although they are an Air National Guard unit, in fact, there is no unit in the active duty Air Force, or the Air National Guard or the reserves that is more highly respected. And they have done some things and been on the cutting edge of tactics and operations all over the world, keeping our folks, protecting America and keeping our great folks on the ground safe for a lot of years. And people ought to know what a treasure we have here. And what I would ask you is to stop by and thank them and the other members of the Air National Guard for their service. And when it's late at night, and if you're over there near Buckley and you hear a little, the decibel level gets a little high, just remember that the roar of an afterburner is most definitely the sound of freedom. Thank you all very much.
Representative Rupe.
I just want to come back around. Thank you all. This is fantastic. And I have to say, you know, sometimes I have to reflect on some of the conversations that have been said. And I know you're indulging me for coming up to the mic the second time. As a veteran and as a military person, we serve as a team. It's very hard for us to stand up and talk about the honors that we've done. We don't see them as honors. We see them as part of our duty, part of the service that we do to this great country. And so one of the things that we talk about on this particular resolution is the MIA and the POWs. This last week, we saw where there was a terrible accident off of Hawaii. And in Fountain, Colorado, we have a service member who's never coming home. And although that was not necessarily in a theater, I'm going to ask all of you to think and reflect and maybe say a prayer, a moment of second or silence for those who are missing in action and our POWs. Thank you.
Representative Fields.
Good morning, Speaker Pro Tem, colleagues, and all of the House Chambers guests that are here today. I am standing in strong support of this resolution. And this is a very special, one of my favorite days is when I get the opportunity to celebrate our veterans and our servicemen and women. Because I really do appreciate your bravery, your courage, your commitment, and your steadfastness. My dad served in the Army for 30 years. That's a long time. My dad joined the Army in 1957. And in 1957, America was a different time. It was a different era. It was during the Jim Crow era. And if you know what that means separate but equal. When my dad joined the Army, it was before the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and it was also before the 1965 Voting Rights Act. I can only imagine what it was like in 1957 when my dad joined the Army, because I think he was looking for ladders of opportunities. And when he looked in his community, he probably did not see opportunities for himself. So he decided to enlist in 1957 because he was trying to pursue the American dream. And what he saw in the military is that the American dream was portable when you became an active member of service as it relates to the U.S. Army. I want to believe that my dad fit that slogan in his heart when he said, "You can be all you can be." And my dad thought that the military could provide him with the opportunities to pursue that American dream. My dad served in Korea. He had 2 tours in Vietnam. And as you know, he really never told me his story when he was in combat. So I can only imagine what it was like in the trenches, in the ditches in Vietnam, having to eat those dried packaged foods. I understand you put water in it and they eat it. I can only imagine what that was like. But he never told me that story. But what I do know is that American dream. We were able to pursue, my mom, my dad, our family, we were able to pursue the American dream because of his military service. My dad was able to take advantage of the GI Bill. My dad was able to buy a home. And because of that GI Bill, I was able to be a first-generation college graduate because of his military service and because of his sacrifice. My mom and dad didn't get to go to college, but I did. And I'm able to stand proudly because of the service that they provided to this country. I'm now able to serve in this chambers as a state representative. So when I think about the sacrifice of my mom and dad, I think about the opportunities that I never had, and that was to say thank you to them. Now, growing up, I would tell my parents, I love you, and I would thank them for all the gifts and all the opportunities that they provided me. But I never told my dad, thank you for your service. I never had the opportunity to tell my dad, thank you for your service. And I think that was because I took my lifestyle for granted. And so to all the men and women who have served, who are continuing to serve in active duty, I want to tell you today, since I didn't get a chance to tell my dad, I'm sharing with you today, I thank you for your service. I thank you for your commitment. I thank you for your loyalty. I thank you.
Is there any other House members who would like to speak on House Joint Resolution 1003? Seeing none, the House will be in recess to allow the Senate sponsors and any other senators who wish to speak. Senator Carroll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Guests, members of the House, this is a special day that we take a moment to share just a fraction of the depth of our gratitude that we feel. Like you, we are here today. I want to thank all of the veterans, all of the service members and military families for your service and your sacrifice on behalf of a grateful Colorado and a grateful nation. You are courage and sacrifice personified. Military service embodies the notion of deep personal sacrifice for the well-being of others. And sometimes those who are most brave, in fact, boast the least, which is why it is important and our job and our duty to lift up and recognize the success, the sacrifice, and the accomplishments that you do on behalf of our state, our nation, and the world. Yesterday, for me, marked the anniversary of my dad's death. And I was reflecting on both Challenger, I'll never forget the day, January 28th. For my father, he was a Korean War veteran, and the values of discipline, hard work, and service to others were values he continued to live long after the Korean War. And I know many of you here have served or have loved ones who have served and are also inspired and continue to be inspired by their example. Thank you. Colorado has a really proud story to tell. I've seen figures actually over 400,000 for veterans we now have in our state and over 37,000 active military members in Colorado. And you heard in the resolution itself, we have 7 major military installations in Colorado. And of course, representing Aurora, I'd be a little remiss if I didn't give a little extra shout out to Buckley. We're really proud of all of the missions and operations, the talent, the skill, the training, and just it's a tribute to excellence that we see carried out at Buckley and these other installations every day. Some of you were in the committees that probably got the updated briefing when we did the report to take a look at the impact for our whole state. So what we know is that when we look at the total impact of all the men and women who are serving here, the DoD-related employment for Colorado is pretty close to 170,000 jobs in our state. It's about 5.2% of our state's employment totals. That is very, very significant, and the economic benefits we get are profound. The figures we saw in the report was over $10.5 billion of labor income in the state are coming from DoD-related. And when you saw the ultimate takeaway on this study for the economic impact in Colorado, it's $27 billion of economic impact to just this state alone. But most of all, even outside of the economic impact, and most importantly, you keep us, our loved ones, our state, and our nation safe from those who would do us harm. And you sacrifice sometimes many of your personal freedoms to defend our rights and liberties. On behalf of the General Assembly and the state of Colorado, we thank you. We thank you for making our state, nation, and world a better place, and we thank you for your service.
Senator Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. The interesting thing to me about this day is to reflect about some items of remembrance. I'm really old, so I kind of have this long memory. I'm not as old as some of the members of our UVC that are here today, but they have more memories than I do, I'm sure. But this is an intergenerational experience of remembrance. We have our honored veterans. We have our active duty people who are serving us now. We even may have some guys up here in the rafters up here who will decide in the future to join our armed forces and to continue on that legacy. I was actually in uniform for 44 years. Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, but actually my experience with people in the military actually started out that early. I did an Eagle Scout project, and part of that project was the very first year, I believe, that we honored POW MIA people in Vietnam. When I went to the Air Force Academy, just amazing number of people, of talented, qualified people, and I think just from the number of our colleagues that have had the preparation of the military or have been around military and as family members, I think is great participation and great preparation for leadership anywhere in our communities. And I think we're seeing that leadership play out here in the General Assembly. When I first got to the Air Force Academy, actually in my first year, I had some interesting events. Since I went into the Academy at 17 years old, I was not able to receive my Eagle Scout Award, so I actually received it from Robin Olds, who was a famous fighter pilot and ace in the Air Force. I was able to meet and work with the superintendent of the Air Force Academy at the time, who was actually part of the Great Escape during World War II. Some of my family members were also in World War II in Korea. I found out actually a couple of years ago that my father had to guard the German crown jewels. He wasn't one of the monuments men, but pretty close to it, and actually guarded those crown jewels that were recovered in one of the castles in Europe. I've served with military officers in other governments. I know in my experience with Jordan, in Jordan, 3 of the military officers I served with became the Prime Minister, the Crown Prince, and the King. So they had pretty adequate preparation in their service and are still serving their country today. I've also had some very close personal friends. I've had crew members like Senior Master Sergeant Louis LeBlanc, who served as my gunner on my air crew, who had been awarded the Medal of Honor. I had another captain, Captain Fleming, at the Air Force Academy. He was my military training teacher, who was also had been awarded the Medal of Honor. My history teacher was not awarded the Medal of Honor, but Major Ronald Fogelman, who taught air power history, became the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and is now living here in Colorado. It's a long line of very amazing relationships in my experience, and it is intergenerational. There are also the times of pain. When I think probably the first time I ever got to leave the Air Force Academy was to go down to one of the family houses there at the Academy for dinner one night. And I got to visit the Pollard family. Mrs. Pollard was, and her children, I've never seen such polite children in my life. They were definitely well schooled. But Dad wasn't home. Colonel Benjamin Pollard was a colonel in the Air Force who was shot down in Vietnam and was missing in action and undeclared to the Red Cross for 6 years. And his family was constantly barraged, and I saw this happen, by aggressive reporters who on camera said, "How could you possibly think that your husband's alive? Just forget about it. He's dead." And yet they kept their faith. And for 6 years, not knowing that he was alive, stood firm until the day he actually returned. I've seen a lot of people killed in action over Iraq. One of my lieutenant colonels I served with was shot down over Iraq. Probably close to 24 of other air crew that were killed in flying accidents, including my own crew that was killed in La Junta, Colorado. So this time of remembrance is appropriate. The title of our bill is Military Veterans and MOW or POW MIA Appreciation Day. Please don't forget them. Please remember them with honor. Please remember and greet the people who have served so honorably in different branches of service. And as Senator Carroll also said, read the report about what's going on here in Colorado. This is new, and it'll show you the profound impact that our relationships between the state of Colorado and our military community will have for the future. Thank you very much.
Senator Lundberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this most important issue. It's a privilege that we have each year to spend some time honoring the military, both those active and the veterans and those who have fallen in the line of service. I bring to you a couple of considerations today. One, I'm reminded of 30 years ago, I and my wife were actually visiting friends in Oahu on the Marine base there in Hawaii. And the first notice I had of the Challenger blowing up were the jets scrambling. They didn't ask questions. They didn't try to figure out what to do. They put them in the air right then and there. They did not know what had happened. And that reminded me of how vigilant, how ever vigilant our military are, always. Always. Let us never forget the men and women who stand in the defense of this nation in so many ways, at so many levels, all over the globe. And that is part of why we are here and spending this time today. The other are those who have served, the veterans that it's already been mentioned how many are here in our state. And we cannot honor all of them and cover all that has occurred, but there is one gentleman that lives up in Larimer County in my area that I do wish, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, to spend a moment or two acknowledging, and may it be a reminder to all of us that there are veterans in our communities that we must never forget about either. The person to whom I'm referring is retired Colonel James G. Ling, who has an extraordinary life. He was born in 1930, and you can do the math on where we're at today. But as a boy, during the Sino-Japanese War, which developed into what we understand as the global conflict of World War II, Jim grew up in Japanese-occupied China in Shanghai. His mother was American by birth, his father was Chinese, and during the occupation, Senator Lambert referred to his military experience beginning in the Boy Scouts. Well, for James Ling, he was active in a secret resistance British Boy Scout troop and actually earned his first wartime medal in that capacity. After the war, Jim came to America to finish his schooling. He joined the Air Force ROTC while studying at Cornell and graduated at the top of his class. Oh, I should mention that he and his wife are with us today as well. Because of some bureaucratic complications, it literally took an act of Congress for him to be recognized as a United States citizen, which then allowed him to receive his second lieutenant bars from the U.S. Air Force, and he served 21 years as a transport navigator. Jim also received a master's degree and several other degrees, his master's degree in nuclear engineering from Iowa State and a PhD in nuclear resource management from Stanford. He married Shelley Kalkowski. I'm close, who herself retired as a lieutenant colonel from the Air Force. And this gets me to the real point of bringing their story, because both Shelley and Jim are very active veterans, serving even in that capacity in so many ways. And I want you to know that Shelley is very active with the United Veterans Legislative Committee and is the immediate past president of the Colorado Council for the Military Officers Association of America. And Jim, he is active with the Northern Colorado Military Officers Association. He's been the treasurer, the vice president, and the president of the association. He has volunteered, now listen carefully, I think this is a very important service he plays, volunteered with the Larimer County Veterans Service Office and has served as a Veterans Companion and member of the Veterans Advisory Committee for Pathways Hospice. Thank you, Jim. He continues to work with ROTC's Gold Bar program. In fact, it's what he was he founded that, he initiated that program, and he's also an accomplished bagpiper and provides music for many events in northern Colorado, and I can attest that he can handle that. Colonel Jim Ling is an American hero in every sense of the word, and colleagues, I would ask that you please join me in honoring Colonel James Ling and his wife, Lieutenant Colonel Shelley Kalkowski. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Are there any other senators who wish to speak on this resolution? Seeing none, the House will come back to order. Did you want to? The House will be in a brief recess. Senator Johnston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Apologize for the added delay. I just wanted to tell two quick stories today about two soldiers that I was moved to share. Whenever Senator Lambert gets up, I always get moved. And so I thought I wanted to share 2 quick thoughts. And the first is about my dad. My dad was a first lieutenant in the U.S. Army in the 1950s, and I lost him this year to Alzheimer's, and it was just after he had passed, and I was working on his eulogy. And I got an email from this man who said, you know, I served with your dad, and I have spent 50 years trying to find you. I met someone in Philadelphia who had a friend from Colorado who knew your neighbor who thought that you might be the Mike Johnston who was Paul Johnston's son, and I just wanted to reach out to you. And I thought, this is great. He is going to have some amazing story about my dad for the eulogy, where he sort of put 3 men on his shoulder and carried them through combat and saved their lives. And won't this be an incredible story he's been waiting 50 years to tell me? The problem was my dad served in the Korean War in 1952, but he was stationed in Germany. So he was probably shooting more whiskey than he was bad guys. And so I wasn't sure exactly what the story was going to be. And what the man said in this email was, he said, I just wanted to tell you what an incredibly and relentlessly decent and kind man your father was. I just wanted you to know I was in a moment in my own life where things felt difficult. I was struggling with my family, and every day as we stood watch together, your dad was there to sort of talk me through it, laugh me through it, help me through it. And for the last 50 years, I've been wanting to find a chance to thank him for what he gave. And I think about that because so often on this day of appreciation, we think about all the moments of incredible heroism, the folks who have given their lives, who fought through combat, and the reality is there are millions of men and women who have stood silent watches together in times of peace, in times of relative obscurity, where they have carried each other along. They have carried families along. They've carried a country along in a quiet moment, without fanfare, without firefight, knowing that there just might be a son 50 years down the road who is deeply missing his father, and that a member of the U.S. military would reach out to say, I just want to share with you how grateful I am for what he gave to me. The second story was I was coming home just 2 months ago from a work trip and was flying back to Denver, and the plane was delayed, and I was trying desperately to get home in time for dinner. And as I watched the moments tick past and past, it started to realize I wasn't going to make it in time. I was thinking of my daughter and my 2 sons who would be disappointed that I wasn't there. And the plane finally lands. And as we land and we pull into the gate, we pull up at the gate and there are sirens everywhere. There are 3 police cars, there are 2 fire trucks, and there is a full color guard waiting. And when I got on the plane, I sat next to a captain in the U.S. Army who I asked a little bit what he was there, why he was doing, and he didn't want to answer many questions. About 10 minutes into the flight, a gentleman from first class gave up his seat and came back and gave it to this captain and asked him to take his seat, so I didn't see him for the rest of the flight. When the plane lands and we pull up and the plane stops and there is this full color guard out there, the pilot comes on and says, I'm going to ask all of you to remain seated because we have the distinct honor today of bringing home the remains of Chief Warrant Officer Brandon Smith home to Grand Junction. And the soldier who was sitting next to me in first class, who is now in first class, was the one who was here to bring Brandon Smith home. The entire plane sat, he got up, went down to the tarmac, and we watched in the place where you're used to watching your luggage come out as they brought Chief Warrant Officer Brandon Smith out in the casket. And there to meet him were his wife and his mom. And they pulled the casket out and they loaded it into the back of the car, and his wife just laid herself across that casket and wouldn't let go. The way that my little 4-year-old grabs onto my leg every time I get home for dinner and won't let go. And I thought about how long the road home is for me. Every time I'm gone for a day or 2 days or 3 days, how much I miss my own family. And I think about the folks like Brandon Smith, whose family will be missing them for a long, long time. And I just wanted to take this moment to thank every man and woman who stood a watch whether it was in war or in peace, in combat or in training, whether it was in uniform or in a church pew. I am a deeply grateful son, and we are a deeply grateful nation. Thank you.
Are there any other senators in the chamber who would like to speak on House Joint Resolution 1003? Going once, going twice. The House will come back to order. The motion before us is the adoption of House Joint Resolution 1003. If there are no objections, we will take a voice vote. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. House Joint Resolution 1003 is adopted. Representative Lantin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I would ask that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call of the House will be added as co-sponsors to House Joint Resolution 1003. And members, before we move on to the next resolution, we do have Representative Sue Ryden, who has a few tributes that she would like to present before we proceed with our next resolution. So, Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Members and guests, welcome again to the 2016 Military Appreciation Day. I think you can remain seated. I don't think you need to stand. We have a number of folks that we want to recognize, and we won't be reading the tributes at length, but I just want to tell you a little bit about each of these folks. But as chair of the State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee, it's really my honor to serve as the chair of this special day. And you can see I get choked up just thinking about it. It's my honor to serve, and we're here today to recognize and honor all those who have served, those who are serving today, and those who have passed on during this past year. And we also honor the families of those who have served, and we recognize that everyone in these chambers has a personal connection to military service. So I'd like to first recognize our own colleagues in the House and the Senate who have served or are currently serving in the military. And so would you all please stand? Our colleagues who are veterans, please stand and let us recognize you. And I'd also like all the veterans that are in the House, either seated on the floor or in the gallery, also please stand and let us recognize you. So members, we have a number of tributes here today recognizing some really important achievements and also the passing on of some of our war heroes. Our first tribute is to George Joe Cicado. He was a Medal of Honor winner. His funeral was just held about a month ago. He was a Japanese-American soldier. When he first tried to join the Army in 1943, he was rejected as a C-4, an undesirable alien. He was an American citizen. But he was not discouraged and later was allowed to enlist and then went on to distinguish himself in a major battle in France. He was a member of the 442nd. He earned the Medal of Honor in that battle. But when he got home, due to ongoing discrimination, he received the Distinguished Cross instead. It wasn't until the year 2000 when President Bill Clinton presented his well-earned Medal of Honor to him and 21 other Japanese-American soldiers. So we have a tribute to Joe Cicado. His daughter Leslie couldn't be here today, but we will make sure that she gets it. We also want to honor Lieutenant General Michelle Johnson. She is the first female superintendent of the Air Force Academy. And she has a number of firsts in her history. She was the first female wing commander at the Academy and the first woman inducted into the Academic All-American Hall of Fame. And members, after we've read all the tributes, then I think we'll have a time for introductions with the Speaker Pro Tem. We also have in the House today Brigadier General Laura Clellan. She is the first female land component commander of the Colorado Army National Guard. We also have the honor of welcoming First Lieutenant Shay Haver. She is the first female Army Ranger, and she is a distinguished Army helicopter pilot. Over this past year, we lost a number of our members of the United Veterans Committee. Wayne Thompson was one of those, and his wife Betty is in the house today. He had a stellar military service, and then also really distinguished himself by helping found the United Veterans Committee, and then serving as a volunteer in the community for many, many years after that. We also last year honored Ken Melcher, who was another retired military member, active in the United Veterans Committee, and a community leader. He was the Veteran of the Year a couple of years ago, and so we did a tribute to him then, and he passed away last summer. It was also my honor to be able to honor the Buckley Air Force Base on the 45th anniversary of the Space-Based Missile Warning at Buckley and with our Greeley Air Station. The tribute recognized the 45th anniversary of the first satellite launched in our space-based infrared missile defense system. That was 1970, and that's when the first giant golf ball was put up at Buckley to receive the signals from that satellite. It was supposed to last 20 years. That was the life expectancy then. That satellite is still up there sending information to our folks down here on the ground. And of course, now we have many other satellites in different orbits around the Earth, and it's our young airmen and women who are out at Buckley right now, committed to defending us 24/7, 365. We also have a tribute for the United Veterans Committee. And we've heard a lot about them today, and I would say if you're a veteran and you have not heard about them, you need to. They are the group that represents all the veterans groups in this state. You know, hundreds, if not thousands of folks have a relationship with the United Veterans Committee. And one thing that they did this past year that really deserves special mention is the work that they did on securing the final funding for our VA hospital in Aurora. And Steve Ryland is here today. The past president, Fred McCurdy, is the current president, and we will introduce a little bit later. But I think we just want everyone to know how important a role they continue to play after their active military service. They continue to serve us day in and day out in helping us make good things happen in our communities. And so, members, I'm glad to be able to present those tributes today, and thank you for allowing us to do this. And we'll turn it back to the rest of our resolutions, and then we will do introductions a little bit later. Thank you.
Representative Corr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and it's a privilege to honor the past and present heroes of our nation, the people who defend us on a daily basis. But I also have a tribute to the leaders of tomorrow, and with the Speaker's permission, is very short. I would ask that Representative Kohler read it to the House. Representative?
Please proceed, Mr. Kohler.
State of Colorado, the House of Representatives convened in the 70th General Assembly hereby extends sincere commendations to the Montrose Olathe NJROTC. The cadets of the Montrose and Olathe Navy Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps have placed first overall at the state field competition. The event combines various physical training, drill, and academic components. The Montrose Olathe team won first place in 7 separate events and took second or third place in 10 other events. The members of the Colorado House of Representatives are proud to recognize and congratulate the state champion Montrose Olathe NJROTC for these outstanding achievements and wish them continued success in all of their endeavors. on request of Representative Don Coram, given this 29th day of January, 2016, State Capitol, Denver.
Representative Coram.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I think this is quite an accomplishment from a group of very dedicated individuals. It is a long list that I will not read to you today because of the length that's going on here today, but I will actually make a copy of it and have it put on your desk because it is something that we're very proud of. This unit is through Montrose High School, through Olathe brings students up for it, but it's about half the size of any other unit that they competed with, and we are truly honored that these young men and women will be our military leaders of tomorrow.
Our next order of business is House resolutions, joint resolutions. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Joint Resolution 10004.
House Joint Resolution 1004 by Representatives Esgar and Navarro, also Senators Crowder and Garcia, concerning the USS Pueblo.
Representative Esgar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move for the adoption of HJR 1004 and request that it be read at length.
Whereas the USS Pueblo was originally launched as a United States Army cargo ship in 1944, but was transferred to the United States Navy and renamed the USS Pueblo in 1966. And whereas the USS Pueblo was named for the city of Pueblo, Colorado, and the county of Pueblo, Colorado, and was the third ship in the naval fleet to bear the name Pueblo. And whereas after leaving Japan in early January 1968 on an intelligence mission, the USS Pueblo was attacked by the North Korean military on January 23, 1968. And whereas according to United States naval authorities and the crew of the USS Pueblo, the ship was in international waters at the time of the attack. And whereas one crew member of the USS Pueblo was killed during the attack, and 80 crew members and 2 civilian oceanographers were captured and held for 11 months by the North Korean government. And whereas this year marks the 48th anniversary of North Korea's attack on the USS Pueblo and her crew. And whereas the USS Pueblo is still in commission in the United States Navy, but continues to be held by the North Korean government and is currently a museum in Pyongyang, North Korea. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 70th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the General Assembly, recognize the bravery and sacrifice of the crew of the USS Pueblo, that we take pride in the fact that the USS Pueblo bears the name of a city and a county in Colorado, and therefore the citizens of Colorado should be aware of the incident that occurred with the USS Pueblo 48 years ago, that we continue the call for Kim Jong-un and the North Korean government to return the USS Pueblo to the people of the United States, and that we hereby designate January 23rd each year as USS Pueblo Day, as a day to remember and honor the brave crew of the USS Pueblo. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to President Barack Obama, Governor John W. Hickenlooper, President Pro Tempore of the United States Senate Orrin Hatch, Speaker of the United States House of Representatives Paul D. Ryan, and the members of Colorado's congressional delegation.
Representative Esgar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Members and guests, I am proud to share with all of you today the history of the USS Pueblo. As many of you may or may not know, Pueblo is called the home of heroes, as we have 4 Medal of Honor recipients in Pueblo. So it's no wonder that the ship was named after our hometown and the place I still proudly call home, Pueblo. We're a very proud community, and we're honored to be part of this today, taking the time to honor and recognize the contributions our veterans are currently serving members of the U.S. military make to our country, our state, and Pueblo. North Korea has held on to this warship since 1968, and we will continue to plead with our pride and tradition to bring this ship, named after the home of heroes, back to the U.S. and back into the hearts of Pueblo.
Representative Navarro.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you, members, and to all of our guests that are here today that have served our country and who have allowed us this freedom to continue to ask that this USS Pueblo be released back to the United States and at Pueblo where it belongs. Thank you.
Are there any other House members who would like to speak on House Joint Resolution 1004? Seeing none, the House will stand in a recess so that any senators may speak. Senator Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Today I rise in support of HJR 1004 As a Marine who served in Iraq in 2003, who was a Mortuary Affairs Specialist, it gives me great pride and honor to bring this resolution, especially on Military Appreciation Day. Not only do I rise in support of this resolution for the USS Pueblo, but for the one Marine who was killed and the 80 crew members and the 2 personnel who served aboard the USS Pueblo when it was attacked on international waters. Now, currently, the USS Pueblo is the only ship to be held by a foreign government. As you've heard, the USS Pueblo is named after a city and a county that we hold in high regard here in Pueblo. It's the home of the heroes, those who have served and those who wear our nation's highest honor. Regardless if you served in the Army or the Air Force, Coast Guard, Navy, or the Marine Corps, one thing we veterans know is that we are all taught to never forget or leave behind anyone. That's why I think it's so important that we ensure that the U.S. Pueblo is brought back home. I ask you in joining me in declaring that the USS Pueblo belongs to the United States of America, its citizen, and our community in Pueblo. And I urge an aye vote.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I also support this resolution. You know, Military Appreciation Day is always important to me. It's a day that I always look forward to. And it should be a day of honor for the servicemen in which we have served and will serve. You know, something happened this morning. We talk about honor and we talk about history of the USS Pueblo. So I took it upon myself to call one of the survivors here in Colorado. His name is Alvin Plucker, out of LaSalle and Fort Lupton area. You know, and I guess what I was expecting when I called him was a vigor of faith in what we do for our veterans, a situation where I felt he would be very ecstatic to have this day in memory of him, but I was somewhat taken aback by what he was saying. And I'm a former veteran service officer, so my veteran service officer stuff kind of took over a little bit, but I'm going to read you what he told me on the phone this morning. And these are his words, and they are unedited. This is from Alvin Plucker, USS Pueblo, from LaSalle, Colorado. No one came to our aid, and they promised they would. We all felt let down by the U.S. We sat in fear and terror. When we finally were rescued many months later, we faced interrogation from our own government. I lived with and still live with PTSD. I had no idea. Finally, I went to the VA, and they have been helping with me this ever since. They also still help me physically since I still struggle with frostbite and problems and back problems from all the beatings. Those that are still alive in my crew, we have lost 20 so far, many to suicide. And I have tried to get an apology from the Navy for not coming to our aid quickly and for refusing to call us prisoners of war. In 1992, Congress decided we could be called POWs, therefore we could get the benefits we settled to. The reason I read this, you know, the picture of the ship up there, this gentleman here was on that ship when it was taken. And, you know, we come here to honor our veterans, but yet we sometimes lose sight of what we do. We come in here and say, you know, we really struggle to honor our veterans, but yet there are veterans out there who feel left out, and this is one of them. And, you know, I, for one, will be contacting a great organization in the state of Colorado, which I was associated with, the Colorado Divisions of Veterans Affairs, to personally contact Mr. Plucker and see exactly what else we can do for him. A lot of times our veterans have issues out there that we can solve for them if we know about them. And the Colorado Division of Veterans Affairs will, you know, they do a great job, and I think we will have a more satisfied veteran after we're done. But I think it's important to, you know, I was listening to General Edwards this morning. He made a great point. You know, what he said was serving military veterans serve on the shoulders of those who came before them. And that's what we are, veterans. And that's what we need to maintain. We need to maintain that honor and integrity on how we treat our veterans when they come out of the service. You know, it's vitally important to all of us. And, you know, again, as a veteran service officer, I took it upon myself to become a veterans advocate and make sure that integrity is guarded. You know, we have a lot of issues with the VA that I think we're trying to overcome, but it's at the expense of the veteran. And this is what we need to maintain, and that's that veteran. But it is very incumbent upon us all to maintain the lessons that the military has taught us, and this honor, integrity, and fidelity. Mr. Pro Tem, I do support this HJR 1004, and I ask for an aye vote. Thank you very much.
Are there any other senators who would like to speak on House Joint Resolution 1004? Seeing none, the House will come back to order. The motion before us is the adoption of House Joint Resolution 1004. If there is no objection, we will take a voice vote. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, no. House Joint Resolution 1004 is adopted. Representative Esker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move that the current roll call of the House be added as co-sponsors of House Joint Resolution 10004.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call of the House will be added as co-sponsors of House Joint Resolution 1004. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Joint Resolution 1005.
House Joint Resolution 1005 by Representatives Williams and Humphrey, also Senators Sonnenberg and Ulibarri, concerning the USS Colorado.
Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move House Joint Resolution 16-1005 and request that it be read at length.
Whereas many Colorado men and women have honorably served in the United States Navy and other branches of the military in the defense of our country. And whereas Colorado is grateful to all members of the United States Armed Forces for their sacrifices and the sacrifices of their families. And whereas the Secretary of the Navy announced in April 2012 that a new Virginia-class submarine would be named the USS Colorado and designated SSN 788. And whereas the USS Colorado will stretch 377 feet, and in addition to its traditional attack submarine roles, will have accommodations for Navy SEALs and carry Tomahawk missiles with a striking distance of 900 miles. And whereas it has been nearly 2 generations since a United States naval warship has borne the proud name of the great state of Colorado. And whereas this will be the 4th United States naval warship so christened, following the great traditions of the battleship USS Colorado, which proudly served from 1923 to 1947, earning 7 battle stars during World War II, the armored cruiser USS Colorado, which was renamed the USS Pueblo and served during World War I, and the 3-masted frigate USS Colorado, which saw service during the Civil War. And whereas this will be the first submarine to bear the name of the great state of Colorado. And whereas the Navy expects to christen the USS Colorado in early fall 2016 and plans to commission the submarine in spring 2017. Now therefore be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 70th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the General Assembly, express our greatest pride in the newest USS Colorado and wish the greatest successes for her crew. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to Governor John Hickenlooper, the USS Colorado Commissioning Committee, the Navy Leagues of Colorado Springs and Denver, and Colorado's congressional delegation.
Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and it is my honor, along with Representative Humphrey, to share with you a little background on HJR 1005. And during the ceremonies at the state capitol in June of 2012, the Secretary of the Navy, Mabus, announced the naming of the newest U.S. Virginia-class submarine, USS Colorado. The construction started in March of 2012 and is scheduled to be commissioned in late 2016. It's being built at the Electric Boat Shipyard in Groton, Connecticut. The USS Colorado will be named by a crew of 134
sailors and officers, and that crew will come from all states. The launching and the christening is scheduled for May of 2016 and will be commissioned in late 2016 of this year. Much work is still needed to be done on the completing of the internal systems and the testing before it is accepted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem.
Representative Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I'm an Army guy, but it's an honor to be up here and to be co-sponsoring this resolution. This is a serious piece of equipment, very impressive. World's most feared submarine force, the U.S. Navy's silent service. And this is a fast attack sub, 12 missile tubes, 4 torpedo tubes, and I can't imagine serving on a submarine. I think I'm a little too tall for it, but my hat's off to everybody who does and all the people who have put so much work into this submarine. A real quick, fast fact for those of you who are Prius and Leaf owners, this nuclear-powered boat will not require refueling during its entire planned life. So eat your hearts out. And the crew will bear the name with dignity, honor, and pride. You have a great legacy. This name has been on several ships, and this is the first submarine, as Representative Williams mentioned, and I'm excited to have this thing christened this fall and then commissioned next spring.
Are there any House members, further House members who would like to speak on House Joint Resolution 1005? Seeing none, are there any senators who would like to speak on House Joint Resolution 1005? Okay, seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of House Joint Resolution 1005. Seeing no objection, we will take a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. House Joint Resolution 1005 is adopted. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I'd like to request that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors on HJR 16-1005.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call of the House will be added as co-sponsors to House Joint Resolution 1005. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Joint Resolution 1006.
HJR 1006 by Representatives Ryden and Thurlow, also Senators Todd and Martinez-Humenick, concerning the designation of a portion of East 6th Avenue in Aurora as the Colorado Freedom Memorial Highway.
Representative Thurlow.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and I move House Joint Resolution 16-1006 and ask that it be read at length.
Whereas 88 Colorado soldiers are buried at Normandy Beach, France, and thousands of others were laid to rest in distant cemeteries or their remains were never recovered in wars on foreign soil. And whereas in May 2000, a group of veterans, historians, and citizens assembled by Rick Crandall and Pat Smith, State Adjutant of the Colorado American Legion, began a series of meetings at the Legion's state headquarters to begin discussing the parameters for which individuals will be included on a memorial dedicated to all Colorado veterans killed in action. And whereas the group concluded that such a memorial would honor veterans who were killed in action or from wounds received in combat action and who had listed Colorado as their home of record upon entering service and would date back to the Spanish-American War so as to include all wars since Colorado attained statehood. And whereas the very first task accomplished by this group was creating the name of the memorial, Pat Smith simply stated it should be called the Colorado Freedom Memorial. And whereas Rick Crandall met with an architectural designer, then 25-year-old Christopher Kenton, who began the design process of the Colorado Freedom Memorial, in April 2001, Kenton finished the design of what would be one of the most unique and beautiful military memorials in America. And whereas in January 2003, the Aurora City Council gave unanimous approval to move forward with creating an agreement between the city and the Colorado Freedom Memorial Foundation for the location of the memorial at Telluride Street and 6th Avenue near Buckley Air Force Base in Aurora. And whereas a partnership was created between the Colorado Freedom Memorial Foundation and the Aurora Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Department, The partnership continues to this day under the leadership of Diane Crandall, who manages the events and day-to-day operation of the Colorado Freedom Memorial. Whereas the nonprofit Colorado Freedom Memorial Foundation received its 501c3 designation from the IRS in June 2001 and began a fundraising campaign that continued for the next 11 years. The first $100 was raised during a Women Marines Association Area 7 conference at Paula Sarl's home, attended by Aurora Mayor Paul Tower, Rick Crandall, and Colorado Women's Hall of Fame member Lieutenant General Carol Mutter. And whereas during a live radiothon on KEZW 1430 AM in May 2012, an anonymous donor contributed $345,000, which provided enough money to begin construction of the Colorado Freedom Memorial. And whereas a groundbreaking ceremony for the Colorado Freedom Memorial was held on February 2nd, 2013, a beautiful, sunny Colorado winter morning. And whereas in May 2013, the Colorado Freedom Memorial was dedicated with several thousand people in attendance. And whereas since then, thousands of Coloradans and visitors from other states and nations have visited the Colorado Freedom Memorial to locate the names of their lost warriors and to reflect on their memories of their loved ones. And whereas the Colorado Freedom Memorial has become a gathering place for annual Memorial Day and Veterans Day commemorations and other statewide veterans events. And whereas the avenue that brings visitors to the Colorado Freedom Memorial is a state highway and is eligible to be named in honor of our war veterans. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 70th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that the portion of East 6th Avenue from the I-225 interchange to the E-470 interchange shall be renamed the Colorado Freedom Memorial Highway, that the Colorado Department of Transportation may accept and expend gifts, grants, and donations for the purpose of the initial placement of the two signs to mark East 6th Avenue from the I-225 interchange to the E-470 interchange as the Colorado Freedom Memorial Highway, and that the Colorado Department of Transportation may explore a cooperative agreement with the Board of County Commissioners of Arapahoe County and the City of Aurora for the maintenance of the markings for the Colorado Freedom Memorial Highway. Be it further resolved that copies of this joint resolution be sent to Governor John Hickenlooper, Colonel John Wagner, Commander, Buckley Air Force Base, Major General H. Michael Edwards, Adjutant General of Colorado, Steve Hogan, Mayor of Aurora, the Aurora City Council, the Board of County Commissioners of Arapahoe County, Pat Smith, Adjutant of American Legion Department of Colorado, former Aurora Mayor Paul Tower, Rick and Diane Crandall, Paula Sarles, President, Women Marines Association, Colorado Columbine, Lieutenant General Carol Mutter, the Veterans of Foreign Wars Department of Colorado, the Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum, the Aurora History Museum, the History Colorado Center, and Colorado's congressional delegation.
Representative Redden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. And I guess you could hear from the resolution that this has been a very long labor of love for two folks who decided to put themselves in a long-term agreement to honor our war dead. And Rick and Diane Crandall are in the House today, and we'll be introducing them a little bit later. But it's just inspiring when you visit this memorial, and I hope you all will. As you know, this is a stretch of 6th Avenue that goes past Buckley Air Force Base, and many of you have probably been on that road and didn't realize that if you had turned left instead of right into the base, left would take you to the Freedom Memorial. And it's a wonderful memorial where just thousands of people have come to sit and meditate, and others come for band concerts and Veterans Day celebrations, and it's just been a wonderful addition to the city of Aurora. So I'm very proud to have brought this resolution today.
Is there further House members who'd like to discuss House Joint Resolution 1006? I see some senators who want to speak on this motion, so the House will be in a brief recess. Senator Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and it's wonderful to be back in this glorious house. It is so beautiful, the restoration, and for our veterans, if you don't know that there's a lot of work that took place, the new chandelier to restoring it back to its original appearance, and it's just wonderful to be back here. I rise in strong support of House Joint Resolution 1006, and am so proud of the hard work that has been achieved. It started with a great idea, and it really continued to flourish and grow through the individual efforts of so many. And I think when we look at what veterans can do, they can go into the schools, they can talk to children, they can be present on special days like today, they can be present in their communities, they can continue to fight to get the VA hospital completed, not soon enough. But this particular project was one that was done out of love. And Rick and Diane Crandall have already been mentioned, but their devotion and their stubbornness to say, we're going to get this done. And Paula Sarlos coming along and saying, the women Marines are going to jump forward and we will make that first donation. So individual veterans who made a difference, who made a place for people to go, because many of our loved ones are not with us today. They may be buried in Fort Logan, they may be in Arlington, they may be over in Grand Junction. And so the Colorado Freedom Memorial has afforded a place, a solitude, a solemn place for people to go and to be able to reflect, to have a moment of silence. And I encourage all of you to go and visit, because it really is a place where people feel safe. A lot of prayer has gone over that Freedom Memorial to keep it safe from harm, from vandalism, which oftentimes we see. And so looking at what that does for our state and give for so many people to be able to go and be reflective is so very important. Along with all of the hard work and the raising of funds and making sure that people were engaged. One of our groups, or one of our businesses in Aurora, the Dry Dock Brewery, came along as partners and created a brew named as the Colorado Freedom Memorial Beer. It was really good, and I'm not a big beer drinker, but I know the Beer Caucus here. You might want to add that to some of the flavors that are tested and tasted. But they came alongside, and also that became a part of the fundraising. So it was a matter of a city and a state and individuals coming together to make something happen that we can all memorialize, that we can all celebrate, and we can all be so very thankful. I'm so appreciative that not only was it an idea, but that it flourished, it became a vision, and it became a reality for the state of Colorado. Thank you, and thank you especially to the Crandalls and to Paula for all of your hard work.
Senator Jimenez Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I also, before I share some other thoughts, just wanted to say thank you to all the veterans in the room, to all my colleagues who are veterans. It's a very important day to recognize you, and I too had family members that were in the military, most who came home and some who did not. And so it's a very nice honor for me to be able to speak to you today. This is dedicated to the memory of the many thousands of Coloradoans who have served in our military and have protected and preserved the freedoms that we all enjoy today. As a matter of fact, we have the freedom to engage in debate and the democracy in the House of Representatives and the Senate because of those freedoms. Today, almost 3 years later, this is very special to be able to see that this is coming to fruition. We are reaffirming our most heartfelt appreciation for the sacrifices made by all of you in our room who are veterans, and the ultimate sacrifice that has been paid by those who have been our fallen warriors, our soldiers, our sailors, and our airmen, all the way back to the Spanish-American War. We are also reaffirming our appreciation for the thousands of hours of work that has been done by the volunteers and the contributions by the donors whose efforts through the Colorado Freedom Memorial Foundation have finally made this a reality after 15 years of planning and active endeavors. I also want to extend our thanks and congratulations to the members and leaders of the Colorado American Legion and the City Council of the City of Aurora, who from the beginning played a central role in generating the broad, sustained public support necessary to make the Colorado Freedom Memorial an actual reality. I also wanted to say thank you to all of the veterans who may have been from our Navajo Nation. Without their code talking, our allies in the United States may not have won World War II. So we have a very diverse group of veterans and people from many, many nations that make up our great United States. So I also wanted to say thank you. This is dedicated to all of those folks as well. Because we can never do enough to honor our veterans and our fallen warriors, it's fitting that today we are designating East 6th Avenue to this purpose, and we ask the Colorado Department of Transportation to please work cooperatively with the Board of County Commissioners and the City of Aurora so that appropriate signage is out there for all Coloradoans and all Colorado visitors who travel that highway to see and are reminded of the heroic sacrifices made by so many so that we can enjoy all the freedoms and all of the opportunities that have been secured by their service, their sacrifice, their dedication to the greatest nation on this earth. Thank you.
Are there any other senators who would like to speak on this resolution? Seeing none, the House will come back to order. The question before us is the adoption of House Joint Resolution 1006. If there's no objection, we will take a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. House Joint Resolution 1006 is adopted. Representative Thurlow.
Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, thank you. I move that the current roll call be made co-sponsors of 1006.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors of House Joint Resolution 1006. Mr. Kohler, please read the title of House Joint Resolution 1007.
HJR 1007 by Representatives Melton and Landgraf, also Senators Hill and Heath, concerning recognition of military personnel from Colorado who have served in Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Freedom Sentinel, Operation New Dawn, Operation Inherent Resolve, and in the global war on terrorism, and honoring those who have died while serving the cause of freedom around the world.
Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move HJR 16-1007 and ask that it be read at length.
Whereas thousands of military personnel from Colorado have served in Afghanistan in Operation Freedom Sentinel, in the Middle East as part of Operation Inherent Resolve, and in the global war on terrorism, as well as past operations, Operation New Dawn and Operation Enduring Freedom, including troops based at Fort Carson, the United States Air Force Academy, Peterson Air Force Base, and Buckley Air Force Base, members of the Colorado National Guard, Army Reserve, and Marine Corps Reserve, and troops from Colorado who are deployed with military units based in other states. And whereas in October 2015, Major Phyllis Joy Pelkey, 45, of Rio Rancho, New Mexico, made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty in support of Operation Freedom Sentinel. Major Pelkey served as an assistant professor of German at the United States Air Force Academy, and due to her integrity and service, she was ultimately selected as aide-de-camp to the superintendent of the academy. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 70th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the Senate concurring herein, that we, the members of the 70th General Assembly of the State of Colorado, remember and honor Major Phyllis Pelkey and all Coloradans who have given their lives in service to their country in Operation Freedom Sentinel, Operation Inherent Resolve, Operation New Dawn, Operation Enduring Freedom, and in the global war on terrorism. Express our sympathy to the families and friends of those service members who have died, and honor the service, dedication, and valor of all military personnel from Colorado who have served and are currently serving in military operations around the world and in the global war on terrorism.
Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I am very humbled today to bring this joint resolution with Representative Melton in honor of Major Phyllis Pelkey and all the men and women of Colorado who have paid the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation. This resolution honors their dedication and valor, but it's their names, faces, and deeds that we must remember forever. Let us share a moment of silence to reflect on our fallen heroes' lives and also to honor their families who feel their absence every moment.
The House will stand in a moment of silence. Please proceed, Representative Landgraf. Or Representative Melton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and thank you, members, for hearing this resolution. This is the fourth year that Representative Landgraf and I have presented this resolution, and the first year when we presented it, there were high 30s in the list of people. This was a multi-page resolution, and that number has steadily decreased. However, I wish this was a resolution we didn't have to run, even though I'm honored, as well as Representative Landgraf is, in running this resolution. This is one that I wish that the number would come down to zero, and we didn't have to do this. We didn't have to stand here and talk about losing Coloradans because of war and conflict, and have to talk about the ultimate sacrifice. But we do appreciate that sacrifice, and I'm grateful that we're down to just one person this year. And with that, I hope that we can continue to show service, or show our gratitude, and make sure that we remember all of those this year and all the years past, for those members who have given their service, their ultimate sacrifice for Colorado and for our country. And so with that, we again ask for a aye vote on Resolution 10,007, and in showing our appreciation to these members.
Representative Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I'll never personally ever forget having to escort a soldier, Warrant Officer Judd Mount, from my unit, who died of wounds he received in Iraq, and how humbling that experience was, and the sacrifices that his family had to take and the toll it took on them, or knocking on a father's door and having to tell him that his son lost his life in Afghanistan. It really puts into perspective some of the small things in life and makes us realize that at any moment someone can have that ultimate sacrifice. And because of that, I rise in support of this resolution. Thank you.
Are there any other House members who would like to speak on House Joint Resolution 1007? Oh, sorry. Representative Sane.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. We're all here today. We all here in the legislature owe a great debt to our U.S. military and our veterans. We can only do our jobs as citizen legislators because of the steadfast men and women who stand ready to defend us from enemies, both foreign and domestic. Because of your service, America doesn't look like the rest of the world's political landscapes. We don't have to engage in multiple revolutions to satisfy the politics of the decade or of the century. We hold to an alienable truce. America doesn't look like other countries whose leaders suppress those who oppose them by killing dissidents and their families, their women and their children, sometimes quickly and sometimes slowly through starvation. Instead, we defend the orphan and the widow, both here and worldwide. America continues to be the shining city on the hill because of the sacrifices of her military, and is becoming more difficult with more deployments and what I'm told is a constant pervasive wearing down of the warrior culture by those who don't want to understand it. The warrior culture embodies honor, courage, and commitment to freedom for our time and for future generations. And we recognize that everything good and honorable that we accomplish here at the Capitol is paid for by blood and sacrifice of our military. The House of Representatives is grateful for your service to Colorado and the country. I rise in support of this resolution.
Are there any other House members who'd like to speak on House Joint Resolution 1007? Seeing none other Senate members who'd like to speak, House will be in a brief recess. Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. Colleagues, this joint resolution names and honors a particular individual, Major Phyllis Pelkey of the United States Air Force, who is a member and a faculty at the United States Air Force Academy. Major Pelkey made the ultimate sacrifice for her country in service in Afghanistan during Operation Freedom Sentinel. We also want to extend to the families and friends of Major Pelkey and all of our fallen service members our deepest condolences for their loss, our gratitude for their sacrifice is ongoing. And I just hope it can match the level of your sense of loss. We're also honoring in this joint resolution the veterans and fallen warriors who served in the 4 military campaigns since the beginning of the global war on terrorism. It began September 11th, 2001, in our country by an attack of Islamist radicals. These 4 campaigns were and continue to be Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. It was the 2001 to 2014 predecessor to Operation Freedom Sentinel, where Major Pelkey gave the ultimate sacrifice. Operation New Dawn in Iraq is the 2010 successor to Operation Iraqi Freedom. And finally, the new and now ongoing Operation Inherent Resolve as our campaign against the Islamic State in Syria, often called ISIS. Colleagues, it's appropriate that we resolve this remembrance of our military, honoring those who are currently serving and have served, ever vigilant that we, our children, and our communities may go about our day in peace. Right now, we're beginning patrols in Iraq. They're 10 hours ahead of us, 11 and a half hours ahead of us in Afghanistan. Wondering right now what the next few hours hold, wondering perhaps what their families back here are doing. It's not just an appreciation that we bring this resolution, however, but an optimism and in hope. My mother still reminds me of her definition she used all growing up, her definition of sacrifice. She says that sacrifice is giving up something we love for something we love more. Our service women and servicemen are giving up comfort, they give up security, they give up health, children's birthday parties, anniversaries, job promotions. They give up funerals of their loved ones they can't make it back for, family reunions. They give up much, but yet we fail to honor their sacrifice if we only focus on what they have given up. What do they gain, we must ask ourselves. Glory, they gain honor, they gain in the immortal satisfaction that the freedom they secure blesses us, the free, as well as those around the world shackled by oppression. And their satisfaction is our satisfaction too. And why this ongoing ritual, this ritual today is so important. Because we share in the same hope as those we honor. Our currently serving women and men inspire our resolve that their sacrifice shall not be in vain, but that our task is to be that government. Our task is to be the government of the people, by the people, and for the people, giving hope of freedom to everyone on earth.
Senator Holbert. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I want to remember and recognize a colleague who has resigned, left us, Senator David Balmer. He had a good lesson for me since I have not served in the military. He cautioned us, be careful with the words, thank you for your service. That we shouldn't ought to be dismissive with that, like, have a nice day, that it means so much more. And Senator Balmer taught a very good lesson. And Senator, if you're out there, we hope you're well, and thank you for teaching us this lesson. Senator Hill certainly spoke to this previously. We who have not served, who have not been there at the moment that a colleague has lost that life, we don't understand. We who have not been there when a colleague who was injured was taken off the battlefield, we don't understand what that's like. For those who came home and died past days, weeks, months, years, decades later, we don't know what that sacrifice is. but we're here to honor those of us who deal here in words. Senator Hill referred to Lincoln's. We need to be careful that we don't presume that we can add or detract from that sacrifice. And those of you who've been there in that moment, those of you who might have been wounded on that battlefield, those of you who have lost friends days, decades later, thank you. Thank you for your service and theirs. Thank you.
Senator Heath.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. And thank you, Senator Holbert, for mentioning Senator Balmer. He and I had the privilege of bringing this resolution for the last, I think, 4 years. As I think the oldest member of this legislature, I'm going to ask your forbearance to let me take you back a little bit in some of my personal memories. I was born in 1937, was old enough when World War II broke out to have some memories. Some of you, I think, have heard me tell the story of my young playmate, Jerry Davis, whose father was a captain in the Merchant Marines, whose ship was torpedoed 3 times off the coast of Maryland. And one time coming home, getting out of his car, fainting in the front yard in front of the 2 of us, because the irony is he had been torpedoed in a life raft for 3 days, picked up by the Coast Guard, brought back, got in his car and drove home, and collapsed in front of us. Going from there to moving to Wisconsin and the Korean War, remembering the Wisconsin National Guard being called up, many of my friends who were then in college, remembering that in 1955, we didn't have a volunteer army, and I want to comment on that in a few minutes as well. Going to the University of Wisconsin, mandatory ROTC. We all had to spend 2 years, males, deciding to stay in ROTC, getting commissioned, and serving on active duty in the Army from 1961 to 1970. And some of you have alluded to where this country was during that time. The civil strife, the huge controversy surrounding the Vietnam War. Actually, if you might remember, literally blowing up the math building at the University of Wisconsin where I went to school in protest. Serving not in Vietnam, but in an 8th Infantry Division in Germany, where we rotated our helicopter pilots every 6 months. Over the course of the 3.5 years that I was there, losing almost 2/3 of that aviation company, that helicopter company. And that was 1970. And coming home, and unlike World War II, where we had these great victory parades, we know how, unfortunately, our Vietnam veterans were welcomed back. And we are dealing with that still today. I served in the reserves until 1983 and watched so many of what continues to go on in terms of our conflicts. And then getting into this resolution today, which ends up talking about the war on terrorism. And who is defending us today? Who is really out there? These are people that have volunteered because we have given up and only asked those who volunteered to defend us. And forgive me for making maybe a personal statement, but I happen to think that the gravest mistake this country ever made was giving up mandatory service. Not necessarily military, but I do believe that if we had the duty for every young person in this country to serve, we'd probably have a little different perspective on what service means and who is really defending this country. I go back and just put it in perspective a little bit back to those Korean War times. And as a high school senior, I was asked to give, as part of a debate, the question was, shall we, listen to this, shall we advance beyond North Korea and cross the Yalu River into China? And as I think now, the events of Korea, North Korea right now, some of the concerns we have there, and it carries over, so history continues to repeat itself, doesn't it? So as we look at this resolution, and as we think about those in Colorado and around the country who are being asked to defend us, and now the global war on terrorism, but basically in protecting our freedom and knowing that each and every one of those are volunteers. I hope it puts in perspective what we're doing here today and thanking those who are willing to do that on behalf of all of us. I had to do it. I really didn't have a choice. And that's a huge difference, I think, between those who are now out there defending us and our volunteers. So I would ask that we think back to all of those who have gone before us, all those that we have lost, and also the privilege that we have to serve. And I've got to also make a personal statement as chair of the Senate State and Military Veterans and Military Affairs Committee. I had the privilege of working closely with General Edwards and the great team that we have in this state that defends and looks out for all of us. We are indeed privileged to be able to serve here. And let's remember, the only way that we are being able to have that privilege is because we have people out there volunteering to defend all of our freedom. Thank you.
Senator Crowder.
Thank you, Mr. Pro Tem. I also rise in support of this resolution. I had the opportunity this year to experience something I've never experienced before. You know, I've done a lot of, with the American Legion of VFW, I've done a lot of military funerals. But what I experienced this year was we dedicated a bridge in Manzanola and a highway in Westcliff for fallen soldiers. What was different about this was both of these young men were 22 and 23 years old. And it was very difficult. It was quite an honor to be a part of this. I think Representative Wilson was involved in it. But what was so different about these young men was looking into the parents' eyes and seeing, the sacrifices that they have made as well as their young son. And it was tough. I think I appreciate Senator Heath's remarks on this. I served in a period of time when it was both draft and enlist. We had what they call RA and US. We all pulled together and we all did what we thought was best. But I think we're getting to the time now when John Quincy Adams said something in the order, "I go to war so my children do not have to." And he said that right after the Revolutionary War, and it was quite an inspiration. But unfortunately, it has not been true. But I think the best way we can, because I have a firm belief that there's never been an American soldier who's died in vain. I refuse to believe that. There's a purpose for every one of those casualties. But I think it's incumbent upon us as a society and as a people to try and find different ways than war, because there's, the five-star mothers, that suffer, and the youth, which we lose in these wars, is something that we need to try and get to the point where we can solve our differences peacefully, and I realize that we need to have a strong military, because I'm very pro-military. But it's unfortunate that this happens, but look in the eyes of these mothers who lost their kids, and it gives you a different perspective on how we should treat our fellow man. But I rise in support of this Resolution 1007, and thank you.
Are there any other senators? Senator Martinez-Jimenez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I just wanted to very quickly share a story. It was 2 years ago on Memorial Day, and I was at one of my local cemeteries, and I was going around looking at all the names of all of the markers that had flags on them. And there was a lone person that was sitting next to one of them, and I could tell he was having a really hard time. His son, his only child, had wanted from the time he was young to serve his country. He loved America, and he wanted to be a part of the military. He had not even reached his 20th birthday, and he had gotten killed after he'd been sent into an active war zone. So to all of those parents and to all of those families who have lost someone, I can feel your pain, even though I have not had any children myself that have been in the military. For all of those of you who have been there and seen your colleagues not come home with you, I can also not feel your pain exactly, but I had 3 cousins who did come home from Vietnam who were not welcomed home after that war, who have suffered many, many things with regards to PTSD and other physical ailments. And I know that there are many people out there who sometimes don't think that we Americans do truly believe in what you did, believe in you as people, but we do. And we need to make sure that you all know that there is service available and that we do support you, because I don't want to see more lives lost once you get home. Thank you.
Are there any further senators who'd like to speak on House Joint Resolution 1007? Seeing none, the House will come back to order. Representative Carver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, for your indulgence. I wasn't going to speak on this resolution, but with the list of the operations, I felt I needed to. I am blessed to have the Academy in my district. I was doing reserve duty on 9/11. And when we went to Delta, we all on the base looked at each other and knew the world had changed. And we immediately, as soon as the lockdown was lifted, those of us in the Colorado Springs area, we just kept our uniform on and we went to the mountain, because the mountain operations had been stood up 24/7, and we started pulling 12-hour shifts. We ran the list of those who had been attacked on 9/11. I knew many, forgive me, as I know many who fell in each of those operations that were read. And the dedication, I wish I could name all of them, but I won't. We raced to stand up U.S. Northern Command to defend our country. And so while we were pulling 12-hour shifts, many of us in Colorado Springs, because we were there, it would save money. They said, you, and you. I happen to be one on the list. We were tagged to stand up U.S. Northern Command. And we rolled that command up. We kept pulling 12-hour shifts. The global war on terror had begun, and we are still in this fight. And so we will see many more operational names and those who serve and I rise in support of this resolution with the latest soldier who served and fell. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on House Joint Resolution 1007? Seeing none, the motion before us is the adoption of House Joint Resolution 1007. If there is no objection, we will take a voice vote. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. House Joint Resolution 1007 is adopted. Representative Landgraf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. I move that the roll call be added as sponsors, co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call of the House will be added as co-sponsors to House Joint Resolution 1007. Members and guests, that concludes our resolutions, but we do have a final act that please stand and remain silent as the playing of taps is performed in the chamber. At this time, I will recognize those members who will introduce our guests in the chamber. Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. And as I promised earlier when I was telling you about the tributes, I would really love to have our recipients stand and let us welcome you. Lieutenant General Michelle Johnson, Brigadier General Laura Clellan, First Lieutenant Shay Haver, and the families of Wayne Thompson and Ken Melcher and Joe Ciccato, and members. I realized that I had someone else I wanted to mention, Major General John France, who passed away last year. He was Colorado's longest serving state adjutant general from 1979 to 1995. He flew 239 combat missions in Vietnam and later was a member of the famed National Guard Minutemen aerial demonstration team. And if we have General France's family here, please stand and let us welcome you. We also want to welcome any of the members of the United Veterans Committee who are here today. And members, earlier today, I believe you heard some wonderful singing from some young folks in the 5th grade class of the Aspen Crossing Elementary School, singing their medley of patriotic songs. And I don't know if they've already gone back to school, but let's give them a hand. And members, as you know, Lockheed Martin has been a great partner with us in a lot of areas. They help sponsor our Aerospace Caucus, and they're here today with a contingent of employees who are veterans. Many of them work in Lockheed's electronics manufacturing facility and were hired through a partnership with the Colorado Department of Labor and Employment and Black Fox Training Institute. Since the program started in 2013, 106 people have graduated from this program. 85 of those graduates have been hired by Lockheed Martin, and of those 85, 2/3 are veterans. Additionally, Lockheed Martin plans to expand this program to accommodate twice as many students and veterans as are currently in each class. And of course, we're always glad to see our former colleague, Representative Joe Rice, who is in the House today and is now in community relations with Lockheed Martin. Let's recognize those veterans. And as has been mentioned a couple of times when we were talking about the Colorado Freedom Memorial Highway, we have in the House today Rick and Diane Crandall and also Paula Sarles. And members, we have two special guests from the Mount Carmel Center of Excellence in Colorado Springs. We have with us Colonel Bob McLaughlin, the recently retired garrison commander at Fort Carson, and the legendary Denver Bronco linebacker, Randy Gradishar, leader of the famous As you know, Randy was a leader of the famous Orange Crush defense and is a member of the Bronco Ring of Fame and is also a frequent USO volunteer. And I see Representative Lee would like to add a couple of words here.
Representative Lee.
Thank you. Well, I'd like to add to the introductions the former Minority Leader Sal Pace, who joined us today. But I would also like to say about retired Garrison Commander Bob McLaughlin that he served 4 combat deployments on behalf of all of us, and his most recent endeavor is as head of the Mount Carmel Center. So he went literally from service to a career helping people move into comprehensive employment within Colorado Springs. And I'd like to introduce also to you someone known to most of us, the legendary number 53, who was working for Bob McLaughlin at the Mount Carmel Center in Colorado Springs. He's Director of Corporate Communications for Phil Long Ford, and he has visited with troops in Afghanistan and Iraq. And as you know, in a prior life, he was the heart and soul of the Orange Crush with the Denver Broncos. He was a first-round pick out of Ohio State after being an academic All-American. He was a 7-time Pro Bowler during his 9 seasons. He was a Ring of Fame awardee and led the Broncos to Super Bowl 12. Let's welcome Randy Gradishar. And I think he has a presentation he would like to make.
Bob and I would also like to thank the veterans and families and for having the opportunity to be able to help celebrate this morning with you again, and we thank each and every one of the veterans and families for their service. And I just wanted to have the opportunity to say thank you for the invitation, Madam Speaker, for allowing us to be here. And as we celebrate the veterans and the active military, and also try to celebrate a little bit of the Denver Broncos for next week winning Super Bowl 50 and bringing I know you have a lot of current player paraphernalia at home, but I want to present this to you as a real Bronco player, having this opportunity to sign this for you and give that to you as a recognition for your work and being here.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. So,
I would just like to say that I'm accepting this on behalf of all of the members of the General Assembly, and we can trade off wearing it if you want to. I'll take a list of names on it. So I deeply appreciate everything that Randy Gradishar has done for veterans and for the community, and I guess this might be an appropriate time to say, go Broncos.
Representative Ryden.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. And I do want to recognize our former colleague and current County Commissioner, Sal Pace. Sal, please stand. Let us applaud you. And members, I think most of you have heard of a fellow named Tim Drago. He's the force behind the Colorado Veterans Monument that's over here in Lincoln Park. And he's here today, and he has brought each of you a book that commemorates the 25th anniversary of the monument and tells the story about the grassroots efforts to build and maintain this Denver landmark. So let's give him a hand. And for anyone I've missed, please give yourselves a hand right now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and I will be distributing the tributes as soon as we finish here. Thank you.
Representative Fields.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem. There are some other special guests that I'd like to announce today, and I'm proud to welcome members of our local Aurora chapter of TRIA, which stands for the Enlisted Association of Enlisted Men. Will you please stand as I call your name? Mr. Vernon York, please stand. Mr. Gregory White, Mr. Charles Moss, Mr. Fred Willis, Ms. Cassie Bell, Mr. Michael Davis, Mr. Aaron Reed, Mr. Willie Harris, and I think Mr. Fred Willis, who is the current president of the Aurora chapter. I want to thank you for your service and your time. Thank you for being here today.
Representative Rosenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and I also have an introduction of Kevin McCormick, a former Navy service member who's also present. Thank you for your service.
And I know there's also a few more members of the GI Forum here, Mr. Ernie Torres, Mr. Joe Davalos, and member of not only the GI Forum, but former commander of the American Legion, Post 151, my father, Richard Pabon. At this point, members, we're going to go into announcements and introductions, but then we will be in recess after announcements and introductions to greet our guest. So for those of you who have announcements and introductions not related to military veterans, but just more generally, please proceed to the podium now.
You want me to continue? Yeah. Oh, okay. I'll do that. Thank you. So I'll show you sharing the stage. Okay, I'll do it. Okay.
Representative Young.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, and I can't think of a better day for a school group to come down. I think probably that they were here when all of our veterans and active military were being recognized, but I did want to say thank you to the university schools, fourth graders, 30 of them led by their teacher Cora Boone, who joined us today at the House of Representatives. Thank you for being here.
Representative Landgraf and Representative Ruppe.
Members, attention. That's sort of
Representative Ruppe and Representative Landgraf, Hold on just a second. I'll see what I can do to get some order here.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, I know you want to greet people. We'll give you some time really soon, but we do have some important announcements, just regular business, so may we have your attention, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We are back, and we want to get this on your calendars, so pay attention to Representative Rupe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Representative Landgraf. Just so you know, we're back, and this is the most appropriate day to remind you of the Veterans Caucus. It's on February 8th, Monday from next Monday, and we're going to be talking about business opportunities and challenges for our veterans as they come out streaming into the main workforce. Put it on your calendar. We'll have lunches provided by Aspen Point, and the Colorado Beverage Association will be bringing drinks. Looking forward to seeing you. Please RSVP.
Representative Williams, Representative Pabon, and Representative Garnett. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, changing gears just a moment, colleagues. The Broncos are going to the Super Bowl next week, and we've done a great job at supporting them. So next week, on Tuesday, it will be Bronco Orange Day. So wear your orange in support of the Denver Broncos. If you wear your jerseys, look as professional as possible. And if you decide to wear jeans, the Madam Speaker will fine you. But let's show our support of the Denver Broncos. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, members. Representative Pabon.
And thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This is taking our United in Orange enthusiasm and pride one step further to give back to our communities. So in addition to wearing your Bronco orange, we'd like you to bring non-perishable items of food, because this is part of a larger contest between the city of Denver and the state of Colorado and the city of Charlotte and the state of North Carolina to see who can raise and garner the most amount of food for our local food banks. So we'll remind you again on Monday when you're paying more attention. But this is United in Orange, dressing in Bronco orange and collecting food. And I'll let Representative Garnett close our cry.
Yeah. Representative Garnett.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, we need to remain undefeated. 2 years ago, we had the same challenge with the city of Seattle, and the city of Denver and the state of Colorado won that contest, which was collecting the most perishable items. We won. We collected 103,194 individual items, and Seattle only collected 53,000. So we nearly doubled our collection. So let's make sure that this body steps up and helps those in need, and make sure that Denver and Colorado remains undefeated by beating Charlotte.
Representative Hamner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe our last announcement here is to wish a happy birthday to one of our members, so I need to have the Capitol Choir come on down. I do need to note that you are sounding beautiful, so I am calling the Capitol Choir down to the well, please. And if we look around our desks, you'll see a beautiful bouquet of flowers on somebody's desk. That's right, it's Representative Buck's birthday today on Military Appreciation Day. Well, it looks like it's you and me, Rep. Wilson.
Looks like it's a dynamic duet.
We need some help down here with the Capitol
Is there a choir present in the room? We have 4. Let's make it, and maybe 5.
We're going to do it right now. Just here we are. Are you ready? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday. Are there further announcements or introductions? That's good, because I don't think anybody will hear them anyway. Madam Majority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 12:30.
The motion is to stand in recess until later today at 12:30. Seeing no objection, so ordered.